Hello and welcome back to Sunshine Strategies Radio. My name is Jen McMillan and I am your host and I am the founder of Sunshine Strategies. So bear with me. Today's episode has been like a year in the making, really. I had hoped to do this yesterday, but it just didn't happen. And I also am noticing, if you're watching on the video, I've worked myself into a stress state of acne. So we're just being real open and honest today. So I hope you guys are well, and I hope that all of my friends that participated in Giving Tuesday had a successful campaign. I saw some really exciting things yesterday, and I'm just so happy to see the community come out and support organizations doing great work. So, that being said, last night I did two things that I don't do very often, for very different reasons, actually. The first one was that I cried, and if you have ever met me, you know that I don't do that frequently. Anger, joy, sadness, crazy, I do those, but crying is not usually in my forte. And yesterday, I had one goal: to publish a podcast here for Giving Tuesday. And at like 8:16 p.m., when I realized that it was just not going to happen, I felt like a failure. And for once, instead of bottling up my disgust and disappointment, I shared my hurt with my husband Tim and my son Charlie. They helped calm me down and realize that I had accomplished so much yesterday, even without reaching my goal. With a deep breath, cocooned between two people that believe in me, I reconsidered my disappointment. For over a year, I've been developing a new business model to try and fit the community needs I see in a way that I know works and that is sustainable. Not to mention that fits with my accommodation needs for my health, my family, and myself. I finally have put together a draft of how it works, and I should take some good advice from one of my many friends named Bill. Slow down. If any of you remember Bill Holland, you will understand that quote. So I put away all my computers last night, my phone, my microphone, and I just stopped and I tucked Charlie and Lizzo into bed. I had started yesterday at 6 a.m. with Lizzo getting up and needing to be fed and watch cartoons, so I needed some rest. And then later, as I returned to snuggle with a still very awake 3-year-old, the second odd thing occurred. I wished that I could talk to John, my grandfather. Some people know that John Boy, as he's sometimes lovingly referred to, I swear it's lovingly, he passed away earlier this year. And while it was a surprise, it wasn't out of the possibilities. You see, my grandma Joyce, his wife, had passed away in 2012. So Grandpa John and I weren't close for a variety of reasons, one of which were our politics. While I don't identify as a Democrat any longer, I'm forever a Bull Moose progressive. And John Boy was a Republican from the Reagan era. But I think a key reason that I started Sunshine Strategies is because I'm still really fucking mad that he and I couldn't talk about real life, because the letters behind our names created another layer in the distrust between us. Sitting here this morning, I wished he could look at my business plan and rip it to shreds. Because while Sunshine Strategies is a nonprofit, we will interact with politics. Hell, what I have proposed is essentially what I think politicians should be doing. It's just that the system is so broken and unfair to those of us not born wealthy. And to be a good politician, you have to talk to that so-called enemy, because no matter how much you disagree, the person is still a member of your community. Grandpa John could evaluate my plan from his experience as a union member let down by leadership, of growing up with an outhouse, because I'm pretty sure that Paisaw and Macon County didn't have sewer lines at that point. And when it came down to it, I think John Boy and I would have agreed on a few things. People with money and power usually don't know how to fix everyday problems. Government doesn't work in America right now for families, and it wastes money. And if you help one part of the community, you better help, or at least be respectful of, the rest of it. When people agree to a few things, you can grow your trust and then work to find solutions. I'm just sorry that my Grandpa John and I couldn't agree on a few more things before he moved on. Instead, since I can't talk to him, I'm going to just have the conversation with you guys on the podcast. And I'm going to tell you how I developed my work model and give you the podcast episode that I worked so hard yesterday to do when we get back here in a moment. All right. So, now that we got that out of the way, yesterday morning, I was here at St. Croix Lake State Park. But before that, I started my morning at Lincoln Homestead State Park. It is one of my favorite places in the whole wide world. And there's a few, and a lot of them are Lincoln related. Abraham Lincoln, I always joke, either I'm haunting him or he's haunting me. But yesterday morning, I was haunting him a bit, and I stopped by the homestead. And if you weren't aware, Macon County, specifically just a couple miles down the road from my house, is where Thomas Lincoln brought his family when they first came to the Illinois Territory. And that winter was the big snow, and Macon County almost killed Abraham Lincoln before he became famous, which seems kind of rude to say. I swear Macon County is really not that bad. I do like living in Macon County. He just had a really terrible experience that first year. But over the last year, I've spent a lot of time in parks like St. Croix and Lincoln Homestead because I really love to use them as remote offices. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But over the last year, I have been giving in an in-kind way. And that's what I really wanted to share yesterday on Giving Tuesday, is I, to my husband's surprise, because I haven't told him this actually, I went ahead and tallied up just an estimate of what I thought my time was worth in the last year for Sunshine Strategies. And just doing a roundabout estimate, I have donated about $30,000 worth of time to getting this nonprofit organized enough to launch. Yesterday, I put a lot of pressure on myself to get all these things in order. I had a plan to release 3 lives. My friend Kelly had recommended that during Giving Tuesday, you go live, but it just wasn't in the cards. I ended up spending a lot of time talking with people that finally I was able to get a hold of after the holiday, and they gave me really great advice, which made me stop what I was doing yesterday and kind of rethink how to do this podcast today. So I'm glad it all happened, but again, I'm real sorry that this episode is a day late. But, after a year, it has taken a year. Last week, I finally felt ready enough to make my first real ask for Sunshine Strategies. Veteran fundraisers know what I mean. I've been asking for donations for a year, but only passively, in the fact that I have a place for people to donate. But last week, I finally had a meaningful pitch to a donor that I knew would support this cause, because he's always believed in me, even when it didn't seem practical. Several years ago, I had the honor to work at Lincoln College, now shuttered, in Lincoln, Illinois. Again, with the Lincoln. I was the annual giving officer, and I was in charge of assisting with telling the story of the college as a whole to donors that would give regularly, including our scholarship donors. And since there wasn't anyone in charge of the function, I added grant writing to my duties when I can manage it. Now, just the other morning, I was listening to a favorite podcast of mine, shout out to True Sunlight, and they were talking about how to disrupt first impressions with, I think, Amanda Knox? I should know that. I follow true crime. Brain power. But that was exactly what I was trying to do. I needed to develop a different kind of relationship with the staff and faculty, and I needed to shock their system to do that. Because the type of collaboration and assistance that I wanted to provide in the form of grant writing and support didn't match their expectations of what an annual giving officer did. I had to go and shock them a bit. So each day I would go to the cafeteria and eat lunch with faculty and staff and students, listening to issues or for things that they needed to do their job better. Then, if I heard something that I could help with, I would go to that person in private and ask them if they had 5 minutes. It usually would turn into at least half an hour. I would try to be mindful of their time, but we'd talk about what they needed. Is that money? Do we need to go and find a donor or a grant to fund that project? Is it, do you need a tow truck to move the car for the theater department? How can I help? Because I know people. I don't just have access to money. Every time that interaction was a shock. It always happened the same way. Everyone would humor me, but no one ever believed that I was going to help with their problem. But again, it was a shock to the system. They had never had someone approach budgeting or planning in this way, and they did not have time to talk about the process. Lincoln College, always short-staffed, doing the best they can with very, very few resources. They're not going to take 10 more minutes to explain to me the difference between A and B. But when I started showing up with the things that they asked for, or when they overheard me fighting with President Gerlach about an issue that they had wanted brought up, they started to take me seriously. They finally understood that I genuinely appreciated the work that we were all doing together, and I wanted to help them in any way that I could. Now, apparently most people don't operate that way, and a lot of people are skeptical when you try to do that. But one of those wish list items at Lincoln College was a strange request at the time. And I am going to tell you about that here in a bit. All right, that's better. Sorry. One of the perks and problems of having a mobile office is that the weather changes. So I think the sun has dipped behind the clouds and we're going to get a little colder. So I had to shut up and close the hatchback. But, like I was saying, one of those wish list items at Lincoln College was a strange request. Doug, a theater faculty member, wanted a 3D printer very, very badly, and President Gerlach could not figure out why. But when you explained to President Gerlach that Doug just wants to print a prop instead of ordering it from out of state, he started to get why we were asking. And while I wasn't able to get Doug the 3D printer he wanted, he was able to get a smaller model and used it in the meantime. Soon after it arrived, Doug brought me a gift. More of a reminder than a gift. He printed out a small purple lynx, the Lincoln College color and mascot. Setting it on my desk, he turned it to face me, and Doug told me that my new friend was there to remind me to look for more grant money for his 3D printer. And even though I left Lincoln College to work in Springfield, I still have that purple lynx on my bookshelf next to my desk. He is there still to remind me to look in unexpected places for resources. I thought of Doug and Lincoln College as I was creating Sunshine Strategies. The idea that the skills I developed as a fundraiser, an advocate, problem solver, and politician at Lincoln College could be shared more widely in my community. Sunshine Strategies could host these projects rather than one single organization. All of this reminiscing also made me think of one of the best humans I've ever met, Bill. Another Bill. Bill taught jazz, and he was in the next office over from Doug. We often ate lunch together, and, a whole group of us would chit-chat politics, life, music. But Bill was always my cheerleader. From when I ran for state representative in 2018, helping Doug with his 3D printer, to connecting with students. I had lost touch with Bill, for a little while and reconnected with him over the last year. Hopefully, one of the things that I'm working on will be beneficial to him as well. He is very much interested in career and technical education, and that is something I've got experience in. So hopefully that is another upcoming project. But if I was really going to do this thing, I needed Bill to donate. And last week, he was my first donation. Bill, Doug, and I are all dreamers, and that we believe that we can improve the world a piece at a time. But we're also pragmatists. Bill, since leaving Lincoln College, has built an amazing business out east. Let me know if you would like to be connected. How did he phrase it? He is the owner of the largest typewriter company in the world. So he's doing amazing things out there in Philadelphia. But if I was going to ask him to donate, I needed a good business model. And thankfully, he saw the benefits of Sunshine Strategies, especially with someone with good intentions leading the way. Since then, I've received a few more small donations, enough to lead me to apply for a few grants. Because what I did at Lincoln College works everywhere. When you show up and listen, you can figure out what levers of power to push and pull for change. But, again, when that happens, you're going to be met with skepticism. And essentially, a year ago, that's what happened here at Lake St. Chris. So, probably about a year ago, I came to St. Chris Lake State Park. If you know me, you know that I like cemeteries, and I was trying to get to Finley Cemetery. At that point, I was, again, using the park as just a remote office, and I ended up stopping in to let them know who I was. Someone sitting in their car in the middle of the park several times a month is pretty strange. So I stopped by and let them know that I had no foul intentions. I'm just working. But the cemetery that I was trying to find had a contemporary of Abraham Lincoln. And I wanted to go take photographs. But I can't get there. When I plugged it into Google Maps, it ends at the East Boat Dock. So I asked James, the site supervisor, and Eric, their office administrator, about this cemetery. And when I showed up at the office, they were polite, but guarded. And I get that a lot when I show up places as a white lady. It works to my benefit a lot of the time. You can go a lot of places if you are polite and a little humorous and respectful. But anyway, James said that he didn't know much about the cemetery, but he'd look into it. He had heard something about it at that point. And from there, Sunshine Strategies found its first initiative, Project Taphophile. Now, I understand that taphophile is a little known word, but it is someone who has a deep appreciation for cemeteries, gravestones, and the culture, art, and stories that they represent. I think every good historian has a bit of taphophilia, which, more on that, I went to the Illinois State Historic Society's event yesterday, which was awesome, by the way, Bill Furry. But originally the word taphophile comes from the Greek words taphos, tomb, and philia, affinity or love. Us taphophiles may also be known as cemetery enthusiasts, tourists, grave hunters, or gravers. I prefer taphophile. I also enjoy talking and explaining what a taphophile is, so that's clearly why I chose that word. But it also seemed perfect for what we were undertaking. You see, soon after I brought up this crazy cemetery to James at St. Chris, someone had a family member that was buried in Finley, and they wanted to go see the cemetery. Since the cemetery's last burial around 1900, a lake and a power plant has sprung up next door. This means the land the cemetery is on has restricted access, and by boat is the only way there. This family member arrived, and they were really disappointed to see the condition of the cemetery. Not only had the site been overtaken by scrub plants like honeysuckle and olive, making it hard to navigate, the shoreline and wrought iron fence has suffered erosion damage. We still can't find part of the fence. Now, normally, I wouldn't have even known about this incident, but I follow a local cemetery enthusiast page on Facebook because, again, taphophile, and this person posted of their explorations on the site, asking how do they help. My interest was piqued. My next day at St. Chris, I made a point to stop by again and talk to James. And over the last 6 months, I've learned so much about cemeteries in Illinois. I've met some really interesting people like Dawn at the IDNR office and John, who does cemetery restoration. And together, we've all figured out a plan to help Finley Cemetery. But you know what? It's also exactly the same problems that I have dealt with at Lincoln College, when Doug and Bill humored me a bit. Limited resources, several conflicting stakeholders, and a community that cares deeply, and no one clearly in charge of the project. So, later on, probably next week, I will dive more deeply into Project Half-File. And this has developed into a significant policy issue that can be addressed to help the over 14,000 cemeteries in Illinois. But this episode, and to celebrate Giving Tuesday a day late, I wanted to highlight the process of how Sunshine Strategies works, because it's super hard to explain. Collaborative projects, especially the ones that are new, are messy and complicated. It takes a positive approach and actual interaction on the ground level to really understand how to solve these issues. Just for Sunshine Strategies, that means enjoying the crisp fall weather at St. Chris Lake as I check in on the progress, or working out of my car at Homestead. Because to make the changes that we need in our communities, I have to be present. And each time I show up, I leave with more knowledge to better solve a whole host of issues, not just the one I stopped to discuss. So I hope that I didn't make this episode too long, and that even though it's not Giving Tuesday any longer, that you will consider making a donation to Sunshine Strategies. I have a goal to get to before the end of December, so that we can start off 2025 a new budget and some money to put where my mouth has been. So our fundraising goal, as I said, is at the end of December, but it's going to be $150,000. That amount covers a slightly roomier office, maybe with a space heater or two, with more storage space, so that I can continue to show up at these places and do organizing on the ground. That will also power the daily work of Sunshine Strategies, including our marketing and initial business startups. So that will cover some Wi-Fi services, that will cover some upgraded technology for the podcast, and it will help cover my salary. The McMillan household itself has donated approximately $30,000 in services to this nonprofit just to fund my time at about 20 hours a week over the last year. Our 2025 budget includes funding to cover my expenses and my time, and allows me to continue to do this work and figure out how to make this work for other communities as well. But for now, I have to go home because it is getting chilly out here. I hope you all stay warm and had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much, and I will see you again. Sunshine Strategies Radio is a publication of Sunshine Strategies, a nonprofit consulting organization created to empower communities to support families. You can donate today at sunshinestrategies.org to continue our work, or contact us if you have a community issue without a solution.